conduct of the meeting. The meeting today will be webcast and the recording will also be available for people to view later through the Council's website. While ever the meeting is open to the public, photography, video and sound recording of the proceedings is permitted. However, the Chair has discretion to withdraw or suspend this permission, for example, if it's disrupting the of the meeting or is being undertaken in a manner which could capture personal information. A member of participating in a meeting object to being recorded. Thank you, Chair.
I'm proposing members silence. Queen just and
right side.
moving across to this side of the room, we've got Cliff.
Councillor Cliff Woodcraft, elected member for Fulwood.
Thank you. And Bob?
Councillor Bob McCann for Baton Ward.
Roger?
Roger Davison, councillor for Ecclesall.
And last but not least, Barbara.
Councillor Barbara Masters for Ecclesall Ward.
Thank you. There are a number of officers up here who are going to present reports and allow us to reach a decision in each matter. Have we any apologies for absence to this meeting, Abby?
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from absence from Councillor Gary Weatherall and Councillor Nigat Basharat.
Items for the exclusion of public and press. I don't believe there are any of those on the agenda today. No. And declarations of interest. Do I have any declaration of interest? I've got Alan, Roger and Barbara. I'll take you in turn. Alan.
Application number 220010 FUL, Well Built UK Limited. That's within my wood.
Alan expressed any representation.
Opinion. There's no opinion, nothing.
I think you need to speak and vote. Yes. I come to Roger. Ladies first.
For I've been on this. I believe casework in the area, in the documents, but two and comment.
Vicky.
Yeah. Masters that it could be any bias in respect that she's done. Then I would advise, but if she believes she gives mind and
I mean, theory about these looking sort of if people raise concerns straight after time to be the in the vicinity or the general area of the school.
yeah, on that basis, Chair, I would suggest that the members should be able to take part objectively without any concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. And finally, Roger.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is slightly different. Obviously, I'm the councillor for the ward in which the decision is going to be made, but I've been doing some casework and I don't want any perception that there would be any bias in any decision making that that I would do. So I'm proposing that I would withdraw.
Is that, can I just check, Roger, that casework is to do with admissions to the school in question? Is that casework to do with admissions to the school in question? Yes. Then I believe you're right. I look to Vicky and she's nodding at me. I believe that is a wise course of action to your interest in withdraw. Thank you very much. Just for that item, please don't abandon us now. That's down to Abby and keeping me on my toes. Yeah. Okay, so the next item of business is the minutes of the previous meeting. And they're contained within your paperwork from pages 9 through to page 12. I'll go through them page by page, both for accuracy and to see whether they're an accurate record. So, page 9, page 10, page 11, and page 12.
Can I just inquire about the chair undertook to send the letter? Was it sent and was there any response to it?
Abby?
I must extend my apologies. I haven't sent it yet, but I will do it in a matter of urgency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, with the exception of Barbara's question about the letter, there are no matters arising, and I propose that there are an accurate record of the meeting. Seconded by Ellen. Thank you. And now we come to the. We have a series of business on the all right, site visits. Yes, can't forget that. We had some very interesting site visits on Monday. The date of the next site visits will be in members' diaries. As always, it's the Monday preceding the committee meeting on the Tuesday, and officers will notify you if there are any site visits that would benefit us. Thank you. Going on now to applications, and we have a range of business to consider today. The first being a tree preservation order number 452, and the location is 3 Kenwood Road. And we've got Vanessa here with us today to make a presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm here to seek confirmation of TPO 452 at 3 Kenwood Road. Before I begin, it should be noted that there's a clerical error on the TPO which lists the tree as an Atlas cedar, but it is in fact a deodar cedar. It's a minor issue, and if you choose to confirm the order today, it will need varying later, but this doesn't substantially change anything with regards to the tree's amenity nor the validity of the order. The TPO protects a cedar tree. It's situated in a grassed amenity space to the rear of 3 Kenwood Road, which is a small block of flats in the Nether Edge Conservation Area. On the 2nd of May 2022, the council received a letter requesting that the tree be protected by a TPO. The letter was co-signed by several people who were affiliated with 3 Kenwood Road, and they stated that one of the leaseholders of the property had threatened to fell the tree to make way for parking spaces that he intended to create on the grassed area. In addition, there was a phone call to myself from a member of the public who said that around the same time as we received the letter that workmen had been seen measuring the ground, presumably in anticipation of creating the parking spaces. The creation of these parking spaces once formed part of a planning application which was submitted by the above leaseholder in 2018. The application originally included creation of 2 parking spaces within the root protection area of the tree, but when this was noted by the planner, he requested that that a tree survey be supplied to assist in ascertaining what impact the parking spaces would have on the tree, which is protected by the fact that it's within the Nether Edge Conservation Area. The architect who acts on behalf of the applicant responded by stating that the car parking spaces would be omitted from the application and no tree survey would therefore be necessary, and that the grassed area would remain as an amenity space as it has always been used by the people who live in the flats. However, by the time I became involved in May, there was still concern that the car parking spaces were going to be made. As a result of that, I went and inspected the tree for its suitability for a tree preservation order and carried out a tempo assessment, which can be found within, I think it's Appendix B. And the assessment produced a clear recommendation for protection, and it was considered expedient in the interest of the amenity to make the TPO. With regards to the tree, there is an image of it which can be seen in Appendix D. It's an early mature cedar, it's tall, open pleasing form. It has undergone some previous tree surgery work just to lift lower branches, but there are no noticeable defects within the tree. It's a long-lived species, it represents good amenity for many years to come, and as a tree which can become very tall, it will become more visually prominent as time goes by. It's currently in full view of the flats which are situated at the rear of the building, and there is a limited view of the tree from various vantage points on Kenwood Road, but a more complete view from between houses on Sharrow Lane. With regards to the tree, no duly made objections have been made. With regards to TPO, no duly made objections have been made, but 2 representations in support of the TPO have been submitted, and I think they're also included within the appendix. Finally, as a mature tree within a garden, it's in keeping with the character of the Nether Edge Conservation Area. And just to say, and as an addendum to this, that the TPO was made to protect the tree on the 12th of May, but on the 30th of June, the council were alerted to the fact that the car parking spaces had been created. So this matter has now gone forward to enforcement, who are dealing with that.
Thank you, Vanessa. Do I have any member questions? Any member comments? I can see no indication, so I propose to... Oh, sorry, I've got Vicky coming in here.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the officer there has just mentioned that there is an amendment required to the TPO, and on that basis I advise that members could confirm the TPO with that modification made.
I think that's very expedient, Vicky,
Thank you.
yes. So do we need to have an amendment proposed and seconded and voted on?
Yeah, if the officer could just clarify the amendment that she seeks, then you could just take a show of hands on confirming with that modification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vanessa, what do you want us to amend?
The amendment would really be the name, the name of the tree. So it's a deodar cedar or a Himalayan cedar would be the common name, and the Latin for that would be Cedrus deodara, and that's the only difference, is the name of the tree.
I'm sure Abby is going to check the spelling of that with you later.
That's fine.
So, do members approve that amendment to the TPO? Thank you. I think it's satisfactory just for a show of hands. I like to go around the room on a plenary decision so there's no absolute mistake, but I think we can agree the TPO on a show of hands. So all those in favour of the confirmation? Thank you. I believe that's unanimous. Yes, thank you very much. The next item of business is also a tree preservation order, so we stay with Vanessa. It's a tree preservation order number 453 at 17 Lyndhurst Road. So over to you, Vanessa.
Hello, so yes, seeking confirmation of TPO 453, which is a woodland TPO, which has been made on the 12th of May to protect a small broadleaf woodland situated between 17 and 27 Lyndhurst Road. And this is a site which was, I think, once used as an allotment garden, and it is within the Nether Edge Conservation Area. In December 2021, concerns were raised by members of the public regarding a discrete access which had been created from the rear garden of 17 Lyndhurst Road into the adjacent woodland. This was followed by a further complaint in April 2022 that builders who were involved in construction work at number 17 had used the access to drive heavy plant machinery into the woodland, and that they had also felled several trees. The inference being that this had been done without first notifying the local planning authority of their intention to do so by submitting a Section 211 notice, which would ordinarily be required as the trees are protected within the conservation area. The site was at that time also subject to a pre-application inquiry which signalled the intention to remove a large number of the trees from the site to facilitate a development. As no consent was given by the council at any point for the removal of any trees from the site, a joint visit between myself and planning enforcement was carried out to assess the damage done and also to consider the suitability of the site for a TPO. Images of the damage can be seen contained within the report, which includes pictures of some of the trees which have been felled, damage to stems and branches from contact with machinery, and compaction and movement of earth within the rooting areas of the trees. I conducted a tempo assessment which afforded the woodland 15 points, and it was therefore considered expedient in the interest of amenity to make the TPO. With regards to the woodland, it runs along Lyndhurst Road for approximately 60 metres, so it's therefore very, very visible. A conservative estimate of the lifespan of the trees in the wood at the time that the TPO was made will be given at around 20 to 40 years. However, the growth of new trees within the area will mean that the actual lifespan of this woodland far, far exceeds that. So the woodland will offer amenity to the area for many years to come. Finally, as the planning authority have a duty to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character of the conservation area, I've included an appraisal of the Netherridge Conservation Area within Appendix D, and you can see that it's noted that trees are a defining feature of the area and that the extensive tree canopy contributes to the distinctively shaded character of the area. So I think that the little woodland on this road is very suited for protection given that. There haven't been any objections received regarding the making of this TPO. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Very clear and very concise. I liked all the illustrations of what you said in the report. Thank you. Do I have any member questions relating to this item? Councillor Masters.
Yeah, just a quick query. Who owns the site? Because it seems very strange that someone backing onto it would think it appropriate to go through a wall.
I must admit, I'm not entirely sure. I think it is the owner of 17. I think he may have purchased the land, but I'd need to double check that. Certainly we hold that information because we have to find out who owns land before we can serve the TPO, but as that's something that's done by the legal, I'm not always entirely sure of the result of the searches. But yeah, I believe it is the person who owns the land at 17.
No, thank you.
Barbara, are you content? Okay.
It's purely a query because it seemed a strange action to take if it was sort of council land or somebody else's land. So, and because you said there was a pre-application inquiry, obviously that land is sort of vulnerable.
So, any further questions? Any comments? I propose to confirm this order by a show of hands. So, all those in favour of the officer recommendation, please show. Again, I make that unanimous. Thank you. And thank you for that, Vanessa. The next item on the agenda, we've got Mark here today for item number 9, which begins at on page 59 of your pack. It's relating to the proposed closure of a footpath which links Cobden View Road and Northfield Road in Crooks. And it's to seek authority to process the public path closure order. I'm going to hand over to Mark. Sorry, can we log the officer in? We can't hear what he's got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. At its meeting on the 14th of June of this year, this committee granted planning permission for the development of 13 flats and 3 retail units on land at the junction of Cobden View Road and Northfield Road, Crooks. As a consequence of this development and in accordance with Directive number 8 of the planning notice, closure of a public path is necessary to facilitate the approved development. Although the current path has no formal status, it is considered prudent to close it, as it may have required status through use in excess of 20 years.
Thank you. Right, I'll take questions from members. No question? Oh, sorry, Councillor Holmeshaw.
Hello, hi. I've got maybe a couple of questions. I wanted to know why this is being brought to us if there is an outstanding claim under Schedule 14 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, and whether in voting for this we are preempting that decision.
Thank you, Chair. There is a claim. By closing the footpath, we've essentially closed that claim as well. It will remove any rights that might have been acquired. The claim has been submitted to our colleagues in Public Rights Away. Their view is that the claim will be successful if the closure is not successful. The closure of the footpath as it currently stands will remove that claim. Sorry if I'm trying to make sense of that. I can understand why it's confusing.
Brian, do you want to come back?
I could come back with a comment.
Do I have any member comments? Councillor Holmeshaw.
Right. My comment is that I don't think we will be satisfying our statutory duty if we were to agree to this closure, and I'm not going to be voting for this closure.
Is there a response to that from officers? Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Price as well.
Just a quickie, haven't we already agreed a planning application which built across this footpath? Has council agreed to that? Is that not the case?
That is the case, yes. Mark, would you like to come back in again?
Yeah, sorry. The necessity for the closure is to facilitate a development that has already got approval. I don't know what other grounds there would be to refuse that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to confirm that the process that will be closing this footpath, although it's not currently seen as a footpath, is due to the planning application. There is a specific power under the Highways Act to do this. So to refuse this closure would make the previous decision to grant the planning application nonsensical. So it would be in accordance with statutory duties to agree this closure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. On the basis of that, Councillor Holmeshaw.
So it sounds to me like there are two rights here. Which one takes precedence?
Vicky, can you respond to that? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. What the Council is proposing to do in this instance is to treat the footpath as though the claim has already been successful. So this is the process that we would undertake if that claim had already been processed and it being found that there had been a footpath there due to the use over 20 years. So there's no rights being prejudiced here. This is the process that would be going ahead if the footpath was successfully already placed on the definitive map. So there's not an issue here in that respect. It's not competing interests. The council is acknowledging that there is a claim here that could be successful, but nevertheless, with the footpath issue being considered as part of the material considerations of the previous planning application, this committee has already considered that and granted the planning application. So it's not a competing rights in that sense. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you, Vicky. That made it all very much clearer. Thank you very much. Councillor Holmeshaw?
I'm still not quite satisfied with this. There's a process that hasn't been covered. Why do we need to do this immediately, now, at this moment, without that request being dealt with?
Vicky, would you like to address that issue, please?
Thank you, Chair. Of course, you could decide not to go ahead with this closure, but again, it would make the previous decision to grant the planning application appear nonsensical. But if you were to take that course of action and the relevant department were to consider this claim and make this a footpath officially on the definitive mapping statement, this closure would then go ahead after that delay has occurred. So there isn't any benefit to anybody to process that claim, make it a footpath, and then process the closure. This process is, a more expedient way of getting to the same result. Thank you, Chair.
Right, I can see no other indications. Given that the recommendations are that members raise no objection to the proposed closure and give authority to the Director of Legal and Governance to take all necessary steps to divert the footpath and to conform the order as an unopposed order, and given that we have received some contraindications from a member on that, I shall go round and take the vote in person. So I'm going to ask if you support the officer recommendation, and I'll start with Councillor Holmeshaw.
I'm not content with the closure of the footpath until that claim is dealt with. So I'm not voting to close it.
Councillor Downing?
Thank you. Yeah, support the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Chaplin?
For the officer recommendation.
Councillor Woodcock?
For the officer recommendation.
Councillor Price?
Support the recommendation.
Councillor Woodcraft?
I'm for the officer recommendation.
Councillor McCann?
For the officer recommendation.
Councillor Davison?
For the officer recommendation.
And Councillor Masters?
For the officer recommendation.
Right, thank you. Abby confirms that's 8 for, 1 against, so that is carried. Thank you very much. Now we move on to item 10 on the agenda, which is applications under various acts and regulations. We have 3 applications to hear today. They begin properly on page 69 of your agenda pack. We have a number of speakers to speak to various applications today. I'm going to ask them to be succinct, to make their the context of what they say relevant to the planning aspects of the applications, and not to exceed 5 minutes. First of all, however, I'm going to go to the first application, which is application number 22/02416, which is a full planning application on land opposite Home Head, Wheeldam, Rivelling Valley. And I'm going to go across the officer to ask them to present the report. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, if I can just draw members' attention to the supplementary report which has been submitted. There have been 2 further letters of support for the scheme. Their grounds of support are similar to the grounds of support outlined in the report. And 1 further letter of objection from Rivelling Valley Conservation Group, and I'll just quickly run through the objections which have been raised. So the concerns that they have raised are that the scheme conflicts with the Green Belt and landscape policies. It fails to preserve and enhance the Rivelling Valley Green Belt and the high quality landscape. It will be difficult to enforce 1 dog and owner on the site at a time. and that there could be future expansion of the site. There are also a couple of drafting errors in the report and the refusal reason, and they've just been corrected, but they don't alter the substance of those points. So if you could bring up the slides, please. Thank you. Next one, please. So the application site is located to the south of Rivelin Valley Road and to the west of the Hag Hill plantation. Vehicular access to the site is taken from Rivelin Valley Road. The site is laid out as fields, and the land rises away up from Rivelin Valley Road to the south of the site, and there are a series of public footpaths which cross the site. The site is 2.6 hectares in area, and permission is sought for a dog walk, which will be 51 metres by 22 metres approximately, located in the northeast corner of that wider site. And as part of that dog walk area, there is some fencing proposed, a timber structure, and some parking. The site is located in the green belt and an area of high landscape value. Planning permission has previously been granted in 2021 for some stables, and they're located to the northeast of the site, parallel to Rivelin Valley Road, and for use of the land to graze animals. This application has come in as a result of an enforcement inquiry because the land was already being used for the purposes of a dog walk. So these are some images of the site. So if you look at the top left image, that's a view from within the wider site, from one of the public footpaths looking down. You can see the stables which have recently, been constructed and are nearing completion. You can make out some fencing in that image. Some of it is sort of construction style fencing, and there's some black plastic sheeting around the fencing. That area there, enclosed by the fencing, is the area which is proposed for the dog park, and that fencing was previously used to enclose the dog park before the use ceased as part of the enforcement inquiry. The picture in the middle on the right hand side is a view from the site entrance, and from that you can see that the fencing is visible from the site entrance, and the view to the bottom left hand side is from within the site on the sort of access road, and again you can see the fencing. It's a bit clearer in that image there. This slide illustrates the wider site and the dog walk area in the context of the wider site. So in the northeast corner you can make out the stables and an access road, and then the dog walk area is to the south of that, is sort of the irregular shaped rectangle area. And the next slide again shows the layout but in more detail. So the access there is existing. The proposal includes expansion of the parking area in front of the stables to accommodate additional vehicles to serve the dog walk area. It also proposes a 1.8 metre high metal style mesh fencing, similar to the sort of fencing you'd often find in commercial areas around schools or industrial premises. And there's also a timber structure located within that dog walk area as well. So this image shows an example of the timber structure which is proposed, and then some examples of the fencing below that, which aren't overly clear there, but it is, like I mentioned, that sort of metal mesh fencing often found around schools. So the site, as mentioned, is within the Greenbelt and an area of high landscape value. In line with Greenbelt policy, facilities for outdoor recreation are not in appropriate development, subject to them preserving the openness of the Greenbelt. In this instance, it's considered that the fencing, owing to its style and scale, coupled with the timber structure, the increased size of the parking area and the associated increase in vehicle movements will not preserve the openness of the Greenbelt. It's also noted that the proposal is seen within the context of the existing stables, and that leads to a sort of incremental development and intensification, which is further harmful to the openness of the Greenbelt. it isn't considered that there are any very special circumstances to outweigh the concerns to the greenbelt in this instance. Furthermore, the proposal would appear at odds with the rural character of the area, appearing intensively developed, and it would be harmful to the area of high landscape value. And for that reason, those reasons, the officer recommendation is to refuse the application.
Thank you, Sarah. I now have a number of speakers. I have no speakers against this application, but I have 3 speakers in favour of this application. I would ask you to come forward as I call you to the console. It's the first speaker I have is Mr. Mick Hill. Mr. Hill, if you'd like to come and take your seat at the desk. There's a speaker in front of you which will allow you to be heard. It's the side with the little mouth on that lights the speaker up. That's it. We can hear you. So if you could confine your remarks to purely planning matters, and you have up to 5 minutes at your convenience.
The only thing I've done on that field is ask what Sheffield Public has asked me to do. I bought the field, I put planning application in for a big stable, they knocked it down, I got the stable. That was for rescue donkeys, which I got. Then, as I was doing it, I built a fence. Well, the fence was already there, actually. We've only put that little bit of black thing. The fence was already there when I bought the field. People were walking across that field in the footpath with their dogs. They asked me what I was doing. I said, that's a brilliant idea, rescuing donkeys and things. And then they said to me, what's that in there? I said, it's my dogs. I built that for my 3 dogs. Well, I built that myself, that stable. And I built that for my 3 dogs. And everybody kept saying to me, can I take my dogs? And I ended up letting people come with their dogs. I charged £10 an hour. I paid my tax on it, which was 20%, and I've paid my tax on it, and I had insurance for it. And I was led to believe I didn't need planning permission. Next minute, the officers come up. Joanna and Lee come up, told me to stop, which I stopped. But what they did say before they left is, I can use it, I can carry on using it for my own dogs and family and friends, which I haven't, I've left it as it is. So I just can't understand that people are going ballistic because there's nowhere in Sheffield. Every other city has got somewhere for rescue dogs and people and dogs. There's no other place in Sheffield, and that's all I'm trying to do is do it for people in Sheffield. That's the only thing I'm doing.
You haven't taken up your 5 minutes, but you don't have to continue if you don't want to. I'm sorry, but there is a speaker. We will have a chance later.
Yeah, I see. Same as when she said about this fencing. I got recommended that fencing off Sheffield Council, so I don't know why Sarah's come out with that, because I got recommended it. My architect, or Stuart, put it through, and there were no objections to that. So why is it being? Why has Sarah just said it's what it is?
Right. So if you have no more comments, we will.
Well, I've got a lot, but I'm just here for Sheffield people and Sheffield dogs and people in general.
Right. We will allow officers to respond to your questions and comments later. The next speaker I have is Mr. John Dolan. I'm sorry, Mr. Hill, if you want to take up the rest of your 5 minutes, please do so. But
I will do, because I'm not here to destroy Greenbelt at all. I'm all for Greenbelt. And I've just been listening to the officers, and the officers has guided me. And I think I talked to Sarah, they've guided me along the way, and all I've followed is their advice. And like you're saying, if I can use it for my family and friends and everything else, what's up with doing what I was doing anyway?
Right. The officer will have a chance.
Just the only thing I want here, I'm just a normal person, normal carry on, and the world, and on her summary, the last bit on her summary, she said, all the policies are outdated. So what do you mean, they're outdated? You said they're all outdated policies. So if they're all outdated policies, why don't we become realistic people in a realistic world? I'm not, that showed bad pictures of that field with them pictures. I'm building the stables, I'm in the middle of building them. They've allowed me to build a big block of stables in Greenbelt, a big block of stables in Greenbelt. And then they're saying I can't build a little fence, put a fence.
So thank you very much for your
Diana
comments.
can sit here smiling if she wants. These sort of people do it every day.
Hill,
I don't.
Mr. Hill, please.
She's smiling at me. It's unfair.
Excuse me. Please don't. It's about planning matters.
Yes, it's about planning matters. Yes, that's right.
It's about planning matters entirely.
And it's about Sheffield people. And if I don't get that dog park, I don't get it. But people have asked me. I haven't done that. It's not a business. I'm not doing millions. It's not a business. People have asked, people of Sheffield, which we all ought to be thinking about people of Sheffield. We're all councillors. People of Sheffield have asked me to there. Nobody else. I can stop it and have my dogs in it. It's not a money racket. People of Sheffield with dogs, what's called reactive dogs, and all have asked me.
Right.
And I've just played along with them, and I've played along with planners, and what they're saying is...
Right. If you could turn your microphone off, please. Thank you. Right. Thank you for your comments. It's clear that you feel passionately about this application. But just to answer your question, I'm sorry, it's not going to help just shouting out. But we are here, we are a planning and regulatory board, and we deal with the legislation and the policies that relate. No, the legislation isn't outdated. Policies may be, and we may be working on new policies, but the legislation that we have to follow isn't. Now, the next speaker, I will allow officers to respond to that far more professionally than me later. The next speaker I have is Mr. John Declan. Mr. Declan, if you would like to come forward to the desk. Dolan. I apologise, Mr. Dolan, if you would like to come forward to the desk. There is a button on the console, and it will allow you to speak on planning matters for up to 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Well, I think, really and truthfully speaking, you're on about the fence, what we put around there. It was for protect the dogs that people is walking across the footpath, because these are nervous dogs. They're rescue dogs. Dogs for the blind. Come on here. Right? And how the heck is you can turn around and say things like that? It's your bill on me, all of you. I'm really, really disgusted with the Labour government that's running this building. But they'll never, ever, I've always been a Labour man right through my working life in the coal mines. You will never, ever get my vote in Sheffield again.
Mr. Dole, I'm afraid that's not to do with planning, and in actual fact, it's cooperative. This is a cross-party board. If you've got anything to say about planning, please continue, but if not, could you move away from the microphone?
I think you're out of order with the planning permission.
I beg your pardon?
I think you're out of order with the planning permission for Valley.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. There's some reverberation.
I can't understand you how you've not letting us open the dog park for these people of Sheffield, Barnsley, Rotherham, Doncaster, Crystal Peaks. No.
Right, thank you for your contribution, Mr. Dolan. The next speaker I have is Susan Powers. Ms. Powers, if you'd like to come forward to the microphone, it is already on, so you can start to speak.
Thank you. I'm one of those people that live in Sheffield, and I know it's supposed to be about planning, but I have 3 rescue dogs that I take to the dog park regularly. They're all feral dogs when I rescued them from all over Europe, and it gives us great pleasure to go to the dog park knowing it's a safe environment for them. Dogs can't be let off in public places, so this is ideal. Where do you let your dogs off now? You can't let them off in parks. How many of you have got dogs? How many of you are dog lovers? This place is idyllic. It's ideal to take your dogs. It's a safe environment for you. It's a safe environment for your dogs. I live at Stannington. We have lots of people that take great big dogs out. So, in fact, it's not safe for me now or the other old people that live up Stannington to take their dogs out because we're in fear of either the people attacking us or the dogs attacking us, which is terrible. My friend got attacked, his face got slashed and his ribs got broken at Rivlin Valley, and his dog got stolen. There's so many dogs being stolen now that people are afraid to take the dogs out. This is something else that has got to be looked at. Dog wardens, you ring them, they're not interested, they don't even come. So this dog park is a dog haven for all the people of Yorkshire to take their dogs safely to.
Thank you for that. I'm now, Vicky, do you want to come in? Are you content that? Okay, thank you. Sarah, if you'd like to respond to the comments made, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's obviously local demand for the proposal, and that has been taken into account. However, the test here is the impact on the openness of the Greenbelt, and as described before, the concern is that the proposal does have a harmful impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. Greenbelt policy does allow for consideration of very special circumstances, and that as part of that we have considered that there is this local demand for the dog park, but that doesn't outweigh the harm to the openness of the Greenbelt, and really something like this needs to be set in a less sensitive location where it wouldn't have that impact on the area of high landscape value or the Greenbelt. In terms of using the site for family and friends, that's not what we're considering today. We're considering the proposal as it's put forward. And in terms of the outdated policies, the reference to the outdated policies is in relation to local policies. And so, because our local policies are outdated, we've assessed the application in line with the national planning policies on Greenbelt, which are very much up to date.
Thank you, Sarah. Right, I'm going to open this up for member questions now. Right. Councillor Davison.
Is one of the main problems, apart from the parking, is it the height of the fencing?
So, obviously, the fencing is one of the issues, and it's the cumulative impact of the fencing, this timber structure, the parking, and the associated proximity to the stables. So it's that incremental development in the Greenbelt. But in terms of the fencing itself, it's the style and the scale of it. So it's 1.8 metre high green metal mesh fencing, which is more commonly found around commercial premises or schools, whereas in the Greenbelt, in the countryside, in a rural area like this, you would expect perhaps timber fencing or something much less visually intrusive.
Does that answer your question, Roger? Thank you. I've got Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly the representations today are from people who are very passionate about finding a safe space to help socialise dogs. And I wonder if there are other areas in Sheffield where that would be more appropriate and whether the officers know of any. And my second question relates to the difference between the stables that have been agreed under planning policies and the fencing for the dog walking and teaching area. Is that because the fencing for the dogs is very visible in the landscape compared to the stables, which seem to be covered by hedges and bushes? Well, certainly that was the case when I was on the site visit yesterday.
Thank you, Mike. Sarah?
Thank you. So I am not aware of any other dog walk areas of this nature within Sheffield. I think there are some further afield, sort of Rotherham Way, and I think one sort of Barnsley Way. In relation to the differences between the stables which have been granted, as you mentioned, yeah, that's located next to the site boundary. It's screened by trees, and the approval was sensitively designed and reduced in scale during the course of the application, and the land was used for grazing of animals with very limited, that's quite a natural rural proposal. Whereas this is the style of the fencing, the timber structure. As mentioned, it's just everything sort of adding together in combination with that stables as well, and that incremental increase in the use and development of the land.
Is that okay, Mike? Do you need to come back?
Yeah, certainly that response was helpful. I just think the other thing I was trying to tease out in there is, do we have any locations in Sheffield that would lend themselves to be more suitable for this activity?
I can't comment on specific locations, but it would seem to me that there would be more suitable locations. Obviously, we would assess applications on a case-by-case basis, but certainly this sort of green belt site in an area of high landscape value, which is very prominent from public footpaths, is very sensitive, and so it would seem to me that there would be more suitable locations elsewhere.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? I'm sorry, no, you've had your chance to have your say. This isn't a debate. Yeah, these are elected members that have the responsibility for making the decision. Are there any further members that have any questions? Councillor Downing.
Yeah, there's some mention here. I mean, obviously, this is Greenbelt, and obviously parking cars on the Greenbelt would have some. But there's something here, there's an objection raised here with highway safety concerns are raised from cars entering and leaving the site. Would that have an impact on this application?
Helen, would you like to come in on this? Let's give Helen a chance to log in at the same time. Tony, could you just turn your mic off?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. We're having all kinds of IT gremlins today, I'm sorry. Thanks. Thank you, thank you. No, we have looked at it in terms of highway safety. The sight lines along from the access are quite acceptable, and I don't think the magnitude of the number of vehicles that are going in would represent a highway safety concern. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Any more members' questions? Any members' comments? Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I can see there's a commercial demand for this, so it would be great for this kind of thing to go ahead. But unfortunately, I've noted the objections of various residents in the area, people using the footpath, and it's in the wrong place. That's my opinion on it. I'm afraid. But I do know there's a real demand for it in Sheffield for the socialisation of dogs. I'm well aware of that.
I'm sorry. Mr. Hill, I'm sorry, you've had your chance to have your say. You can't keep shouting out and disturbing the conduct of this meeting. Any more member questions? Councillor Price. Sorry, comments.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is a very difficult one, I must admit. However, we do have a duty to protect the green belt, and it's getting more and more desperate every planning application that comes in. I think, I mean, I've passed Ruling Valley 3 or 4 times a month. I cycle past that, and I just think this site at the moment looks a mess, and it was passed. And I just think that a fence of that height and that nature does distract from the beauty of the area. While the cars, it will attract more vehicles, and while I understand it's fine for a family and all that, but once it becomes a commercial adventure, whatever people say, it will be a commercial venture in the Rivelin Valley, in the Greenbelt, a place of high landscape value. I think it's a step too far. And I've every sympathy with dog owners, and all my family have dogs, but they do find other places, and I think it's in the wrong place. And I agree with the previous speaker. It looks a mess now. Never mind what it will do in the future. It has planning permission for grazing and horses. Now, to increase that to what was being requested here, I can't support, Chair. And I understand the passion, I understand everybody's emotion, but we've got to protect the green belt, particularly when it's so much in the city like Rivelin Valley is, and therefore I'm going to support the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any more comments? Councillor Chaplin.
Chair, for the same reasons that Councillor Price has outlined, this is in an area of high landscape value. It is in the green belt. It's also very close to the Peak District National Park, and I'll declare an interest because I represent the Sheffield City Council on that body. But it's less than 2 miles from that boundary, and I cannot see how we can support the continued use of this dog teaching facility. But we do need somewhere like it in Sheffield in a more suitable location. So I will second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor. I can see no other indications of members wishing to comment, so I will go to the vote and I will go around the room. The officer recommendation is to refuse the application, and I'm going to go around and ask if you support that recommendation. Councillor Holmshaw?
I will be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Downing?
Yeah, I support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Chaplin?
For the officer recommendation.
Councillor Woodcock?
For the officer recommendation.
Councillor Price?
For the recommendation, Chair.
Sorry, I can't see you above the bell. Councillor Woodcraft?
Yes, for the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor McCann?
For the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Davison?
For the recommendation.
And finally, Councillor Masters?
Or the recommendation.
And that's unanimous. The application is refused. So thank you for your time. The next item on the agenda, application 10B, is application number 22/01731 FUL, and it's a full planning application for the erection of a 3-storey block to form additional classrooms at Silverdale School. I'm going to pass over to the officer to present the report. Thank you. Oh, yes, of course. Thank you, Councillor Davison. We'll come and get you. We'll come and get you. We'll come and get you when it's all over. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for the erection of a new teaching block at Silverdale School. The site is a patch of land within the grounds of Silverdale School, south of the existing school building, and the red line boundary also includes the access to the site. On the aerial image, you can see that the school grounds form a large area of the site, and there's a woodland character to the south and west of the school building. Silverdale is a comprehensive co-educational secondary school with a sixth form. The sole access you can see is from Bents Crescent, which is off Bents Drive, and the school is situated in the Bents Green area of the city in the southwest. The site's located in the Green Belt, and it's in flood zone 1, being at low risk of flooding. There have been 21 objections received and 2 neutral comments. You can also see, sorry if you don't mind, thank you. You can see there's an existing car park to the front of the school building that has 111 spaces. And then further to the west is open countryside, and the land slopes upwards in this direction. You can see in the very bottom left-hand corner of that image, there's a public footpath, which is elevated above the rear of the school site. Next slide, thank you. So these photos show the character of Bents Drive, which is a leafy residential street with unrestricted on-street parking adjacent to grass verges, interrupted by entrances to residents' private driveways. The left-hand photo is taken looking to the northwest up the street. The right-hand photo is looking down the street from the Ringing Low Road junction. I would just point out as well that these photos were taken during the May half-term holidays, so there's no school activity in these images. Next slide, thank you. So these photos show the existing access to the school via Bents Crescent, which is approximately in the middle of Bents Drive. Next slide. And the left-hand photo here is just a closer-up image of the access point to the school. The right-hand photo shows Ringing Low Road facing west, and that photo is taken from near the junction with Bents Drive. The left-hand photo on this slide is taken from the elevated footpath, which is up in the countryside amidst the green belt. You can see that views of the school are fairly limited due to the topography of the site and the screening boundary vegetation, but you can just get a glimpse of the flat roofs of the school towards the left-hand side of that image. The image on the right-hand side is Wirlow Elms Chase, which is a small residential cul-de-sac to the south of the site. The school building is located behind the mature trees that you can see in the middle of that photo behind the houses. And these photos show the existing car park to the front of the school. And the left-hand photo here shows the school building taken from the car park. The right-hand photo is taken from the south of the school. So this is where the new school building would be located, roughly where those trees are immediately adjacent to the school. And the existing building you can see is characterised by the brightly coloured spandrel panels, white render, and then blue-grey brickwork on the ground floor. These photos show the site of the new school building, and the right-hand photo is looking south from the site, showing the sort of second tree belt, which is at the periphery of the site. And these photos again show where the school building would be located, so it would be situated just to the left of the existing building, as seen in these photos. And then these photos are taken from the other side of the school, so at the north of the site. You can see there's quite a steep level change with the ramps and steps, and then there are extensive playing fields, which you can see in the right-hand photo. Also, in the left-hand photo, to the left of the image, is a mobile, a modular classroom, which is there on a temporary basis to cater for existing demand for school places. That would be removed once the new building was constructed, and the site access is just behind that mobile unit. So this site plan shows the extent of development proposed. So the development would consist of a 3-storey teaching block providing 2,295 square metres of floor space and enabling the expansion of the school to support an additional 263 places. To the front of the building would be an external social area, partially covered with canopies, and this external area would be raised to the same level as the ground floor. Next slide, please. So the ground floor would provide a dining area as well as sixth form social and study areas. Next slide, please. On the first floor, there would be teaching spaces for all years, including specialist art rooms and IT rooms. And on the second floor, there would be 8 general teaching classrooms. All floors would also have ancillary staff rooms, offices and toilet facilities, and stairways at either side of the building with a lift for step-free access. On the roof, there would be both a green sedum roof system and solar panels to provide sustainable energy for the building. These elevations show the external appearance of the proposed building. So it's been designed to closely match the existing school in appearance and materials, with white render and coloured panelling on the upper floors, and then more muted dark blue-grey brickwork on the ground floor. The site sections show the building in the context of the existing building and the wider levels on the site. So you can see how the site slopes up towards the countryside to the west. This visualisation shows how the building would closely integrate with the architecture of the existing building. I would point out that there's been a minor design change since this visualisation was produced, and that would add a couple of additional coloured panels to the front elevation in between those 4 windows at the front. But otherwise, the design is as put forward in this image, and it's a close representation of how the building would look in situ. This image shows a wider site master plan, including landscaping enhancement proposals across the school grounds. So in terms of the key planning matters for consideration, the main considerations are the impact on the green belt, the ecological impact, and then also highway safety. So in terms of green belt, by definition in the National Planning Policy Framework, the construction of new buildings represents inappropriate development in the green belt and should only be approved in very special circumstances. So in this case, the very special circumstances needed to justify the development in the green belt are the acute need for additional secondary school places in the city, but particularly in the southwest of the city. So the committee report sets out a full breakdown of school need, but in short, due to a spike in birth rates between 2002 and 2012, the increased population is now reaching secondary school age, and there's an expected deficit of around 200 places across the city in the 2023-24 academic year. So citywide, the need for school places would then begin to fall after this peak, but in the southwest of the city, the council's education team has forecasted that the demand for places will continue to exceed current capacity until 2027-28. So in order to deal with this additional need, expansions at King Egbert School and Silverdale have been put forward. The new building at King Egbert has now been approved, so the residual need is proposed to be accommodated at Silverdale School. Although there is a clear need for school places, to demonstrate very special circumstances, planning officers have also requested justification as to why other schools could not be expanded or a new school built altogether rather than building on greenbelt land. So the discounting process for other sites is set out on page 102 of the committee report, but in summary, alternative options for school expansion have been considered. There are various constraints in terms of land availability, split school or phase school arrangements. High Store School is also located in the greenbelt, and there are other buildings which are listed or located in conservation areas which provide further constraints to development. The construction of a new school altogether would also not be appropriate because after the peak demand years, this could lead to a surplus of places. And the other issue is that the process of establishing a completely new school would be too slow to meet the immediate 2023 peak. So with all this considered, we do agree that very special circumstances do exist to support greenbelt development. In terms of the impact on the openness of the greenbelt, as you can see in the photos, we consider that the site is sufficiently screened to avoid a harmful visual impact, and the topography also limits views of the site from the wider open countryside. The design would be in keeping with the existing school, and the development would be contained within the grounds of the building, so there'd be no encroachment into the greenbelt. Although there would be some tree removal, the key tree belts at the very peripheries of the site would be maintained, and there would be replacement tree planting to provide additional screening. In terms of ecology and landscaping, the biodiversity officer and the landscape officer are happy with the replacement planting that's been secured. So that would be across the wider grounds as well as in the immediate vicinity of the building. But with replacement tree and scrub planting, as well as the green roof and native landscaping, the proposal would deliver a biodiversity net gain of 67.96%, which is well exceeding policy requirements. Next slide, please. In terms of highway safety, there have been concerns raised by residents over a lack of parking to support the expansion. The site, as you've seen from the photos, is significantly constrained by topography and by the playing fields. So increasing parking within the site was initially considered not to be possible. But through the course of the application, we have worked to find a way to deliver 10 new parking spaces, which is considered proportionate to the 15 new members of staff that would be needed to support the expansion, given that currently, according to the transport assessment surveys, around 2/3 of staff members currently drive to work. So the additional 10 parking spaces are shown in dark green on that site plan. That's where the bike sheds are currently located, and the bike sheds would be relocated to the orange hatched area on that site plan, where the temporary classroom is currently located. So once that's removed, the cycle parking will be relocated to accommodate the vehicle parking spaces. In terms of traffic on Bents Drive, it's acknowledged that the road can be busy at peak drop-off and pick-up times. So the proposed solution from Highways is to promote the introduction of waiting restrictions on the south side of the road, which would apply at peak times in the morning and afternoon, to deal with existing traffic problems and to prevent blockages on the road. And that's proposed to be secured through condition. So with the provision of those additional parking spaces and the waiting restrictions, we do consider that the proposal would not raise any highway safety issues. Other relevant planning considerations include residential amenity. We don't have any concerns in this regard because the closest residential boundary is approximately 50 metres away. There are also no concerns in relation to land conditions, and there's not considered to be any contamination risk, and there are no concerns about the presence of archaeological remains. And in terms of drainage, we have agreed suitable conditions to restrict the surface water discharge rate and secure full details of drainage design to avoid increasing flood risk downstream from the watercourse that crosses the site. So overall, we do consider that there are very special circumstances to justify greenbelt development. The proposal is necessary to deliver sufficient school places, and the application represents sustainable development. I would just point out that the recommendation is to be minded to grant. That is because the application needs to be referred to the Secretary of State for a consultation period, during which they'd have the opportunity to comment or to call in the application, because it is major development in the Greenbelt. But the vote, I believe, should be undertaken in the normal manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We have one speaker on this application, no speakers against, and Sarah Sims is coming to speak for the application. Hello, Sarah. If you'd like to come forward to the desk in front of you, the button with the, I was going to say with a little mouth on, but I don't know if that's got to, but you've got you've got it working. You have 5 minutes to address the meeting at your convenience.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Sims. I'm Head of Silverdale School. So there's no doubt that we need more permanent school spaces in the southwest of Sheffield. This is clear from both a secondary school expansion report published by the Council in March 2022 and also from the experience of myself and fellow head teachers over recent years. Our schools are bulging at the seams, and every year we're asked to temporarily increase our intake. Whilst the admissions team do a really great job, the lack of spaces leads to very difficult and sometimes heartbreaking situations for local families, with children being allocated a different school to their siblings and a long journey away from home. So, why Silverdale? The officer's report does a great job of summarising the planning reasons about why other schools have been discounted. Also, this expansion is a genuine opportunity to give some of the more vulnerable children in our city a life-changing opportunity. Silverdale School provides an outstanding inclusive education where student outcomes are amongst the best, if not the best, in the city. This is particularly true for our disadvantaged students who make progress well above the national average for all students. This is important because if this planning application is denied, the current admissions criteria means that it is our most disadvantaged students, those who travel by bus from Broom Hill, the Aberdale Corridor and Sharrow, who would miss out on a place at Silverdale, which is their catchment school. When you look at the makeup of our diverse sixth form and the destinations of our Year 11 and Year 13 students, I believe that this would be a real blow to social mobility and mixing in Sheffield. At present, the school is actually operating significantly over existing capacity, which has resulted in temporary classrooms, a shortage of specialist accommodation, overcrowded social areas and corridors, all of which negatively impact the student experience and is not a permanent solution. In fact, the actual increase in student numbers will be lower than the 263 students stated on page 107 of the report, because school has already temporarily expanded in 3 year groups. As the larger year groups in years in year 7 to 11 move through the school, this does cause an increase in sixth form numbers. However, the nature of the sixth form timetables means that these students often don't arrive or leave school at the same time as the younger students. Therefore, it seems that an increase in traffic volume at peak times, that the increase in traffic volumes at peak times, will be smaller than perhaps anticipated. In addition, the student numbers will remain static until September 2025 and then increase steadily over 7 years, so there isn't going to be a sudden explosion in student numbers. The additional SEN students will be in sixth form only, and we're in discussion with the Council SEN commissioning team about the nature of this arrangement. We have provisionally discussed up to 30 SEN students accessing our A-level curriculum, but this will be a flexible offer, possibly in partnership with other local providers, and so again, we don't foresee this impacting on the traffic at drop-off and pick-up times. The school is fully in support of a parking restriction order on Bens Drive proposed by Condition 8. We already regularly request that parents park considerately and have worked with mode shift stars to promote active transport amongst our student and parent body. The Student Council have developed a park and stride map and travel information sheet that can be viewed on our website. As well as funding additional parking in the local pub car park, we have negotiated a 10-minute free drop-off and pick-up arrangement, which many of our parents do use. A swift decision would be very beneficial for 2 important reasons. Firstly, Sheffield is facing a further increase in demand for secondary places from September 23 that cannot be met without the proposed expansions. Secondly, the rising cost of materials is a major risk factor for this project if delays in planning require us to re-tender. To summarise, the expansion is desperately needed to provide secondary school places for the children and families of Sheffield. Silverdale School, along with King Egbert's, are, from a strategic and planning perspective, the most appropriate schools for the additional places. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. If you could press in. Thank you very much. Do we need to respond to that at all?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. In that case, I'll open for members' questions. Councillor Downing.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, this is something that is needed across the city, not just in Silverdale. I mean, school places are at a premium, and buildings are going up, houses are going up all over the city, and obviously the green belt is something that, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, to help protect children crossing busy roads. Thank you.
Helen, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, the application was accompanied by a transport assessment which looked at highway safety issues, highway capacity issues. The latest accident, I think it was five years accident data was considered, and basically there was no, what can I say, overarching issue in terms of road safety. The accidents were obviously, you know, unfortunate, but there was no highway design, highway layout reason that those accidents occurred. We are mindful that, as outside many schools, that during the pick-up and drop-off period it can get quite congested, and that is an area where there can be issues in terms of safety. Obviously, you've got, you know, a lot of children, a lot of young people moving about. You've got cars moving about, and that's why we have suggested that we try and manage the situation by the provision of a traffic regulation order, which would only operate during the sort of peak pick-up and drop-off, obviously because we don't want to adversely affect existing residents throughout the day, but that would mean that the traffic flowed more freely, and that you weren't getting the potential issues of safety of too much congestion, double parking, people having to sort of try and squash between cars and things like that. But overall, as I say, we think from a highway safety perspective, with these measures in place, that is acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Most certainly.
Yeah, it's just, have we had an assessment? Did you say, I might have missed it, did you say we had an assessment done, and do we know how many accidents have occurred over the last 12 months or so? Thank you.
Yes, a transport assessment was undertaken, and I think they looked at the last 3 years' accidents. I must admit, I haven't got the figures to hand here, but we did look at those accidents, look at the causes of those accidents, and whether there were any specifically related to, you know, whether it be school children, older people, pedestrians, cyclists. And as I say, there wasn't sort of one outstanding causal feature that would lead us to suggest that there was a problem in terms of safety for school children, safety for you know, drivers, safety for cyclists. There were very much, it sounds a bit strange, but a series of random events, and that there wasn't one identified location where we could say, yes, there is an issue here, and so we need to do X, Y, and Z. The main area of concern, as I say, that we had is the congestion that can occur in the immediate vicinity of the access to the school at the drop-off and pick-up times, and we do feel that the TRO will resolve that issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Woodcraft.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, still on the topic of traffic on Bents Drive. I mean, there's traffic that needs to go on Bents Drive of necessity. So people who are teachers, you know, the staff who park within the school grounds, obviously need to drive along Bents Drive. And that's an increase of 10 because there's 10 more parking spaces. What I'd like to know is, of necessity, how many students really need dropping off on Bents Drive and could be dropped off elsewhere? What I'm thinking of is, are there a number of disabled students who cannot be dropped off at a distance? Do we have that information?
I think what we can't control in planning is how individual students or parents will choose to travel to school. There is a travel plan which aims to increase the proportion of active travel, and that is proposed to be secured through condition as well, that is complied with. There is, I believe, an existing drop-off place within the school grounds for disabled children that might need that. But otherwise, what we can't control, you know, the school doesn't have jurisdiction over the highway, so they might advise, they might put forward suggested measures, but they can't control drop-off behaviour on an unrestricted highway. I guess the impact of the proposed TRO would be to maybe make that less desirable and it might spread some of the traffic elsewhere so that there's less congestion, because there wouldn't physically be as much space for drop-offs if one side of the road is restricted.
Is that the answer to your question?
Yes, I think so. I think, Chair, yeah. I mean, there isn't a particular category of students at this school who have physical disabilities. There'll obviously be a proportion, but it's not a school that major on students with disabilities. And so that my understanding is that there will be a lot of children that could be dropped off some distance away, and there would be opportunity to take further measures on managing the traffic in the future. Is that right?
Thank you, Chair. I think basically through the measures that you've put in the travel plan, I think that's the ideal area to suggest that. As I think the head teacher said, there's was it a park and stride proposal that has been put together. So I think that type of thing where you may identify remote locations that the highway authority may not be able to control, but the school through the travel plan can encourage that. And I think it's the travel plan that is that ideal location for that type of work and that type of proposal to come forward from. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've next got Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for planning officers. Given that Silverdale's not the only school, well, this is the school right now that's seeking to expand its buildings, but we've had a number of other schools, including High Stores, I think King Edbert's was mentioned, have all gone through expansions. Why didn't planning officers consider building a new school in the southwest at a different location, because that would take pressure off the green belt here in Silverdale?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Chaplin. So there has been a school recently built in 2018. That was Mercia School. I did ask this question in terms of getting, the very special circumstances, ascertaining that we did have very special circumstances for Greenbelt development. The response from the education team was that essentially birth rates statistically are seen to operate in a sort of cyclical pattern. So while we are kind of at an increasing demand moment now, if we built a new school altogether, that could generate a surplus in the future. So then essentially the school provision wouldn't be sustainable to continue in that way. So it's just being kind of mindful of the data and how many places are actually needed. So a new school wasn't considered to be sustainable going forward on that basis. And then the other reason specifically at this moment in time that a new school wouldn't be appropriate would be the process of establishing that new school would take too long to meet that peak demand year of 2023-24, because there's a whole sort of free school assumption process to go through. So in order to meet that most urgent peak, it simply wouldn't be possible to do that with a new school as opposed to an expansion.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Well, I think I understood most of it, except that very last bit about meeting that demand for 23-24. And given that we're now heading into the tail end of 2022, I cannot see that this development will be ready in time for the 23-24 school year, or unless you know different.
The intention is that it will be ready for September 2023. Obviously, kind of once it's through planning, we don't have control over the construction of the building itself, but that is the intention.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Councillor Barbara Masters.
Thank you, Chair. On the site visit yesterday, I did express my disappointment about the lack of usage of the cycling storage facilities, because it is traffic that is the issue, because it's not just limited to Silverdale, it's every school, I should think, in Sheffield, specifically concentrated in in the high stores area generally. And now, what I know that sort of, you know, this TRO is going to be sort of suggested, but what I would seriously like is if it's possible for the school to consult with residents, because they might have their own ideas about what may work better, because I know about the traffic situation. I've been caught up in it, and it's the residents' experience is not reflected necessarily in the surveys that were done, and we all know that. So I think sort of, you know, what options were explored to manage the traffic, and why has the restricted waiting times been identified as one of the issues. And I noticed the comment from the head, you know, sort of it would be the children from the Abbeydale corridor who would be disadvantaged if the school wasn't allowed to expand. And I'm just curious about how they get there already, because there isn't a direct route that I'm aware of from the Abbeydale corridor to Silverdale, even though there's a couple of bus routes that touch on it. So again, all of it is traffic, all of it is how do we manage it in the future. Hopefully, as the active travel works through the primary sector, it will be reflected in a few years' time in the secondary sector, but it's going to be really hard for residents in the meantime. So what other traffic things have been looked at, please?
Thank you,
Is that
Chair.
something you can come back on?
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is difficult because, I mean, obviously, you know, as you say, I think we get the same sort of issues outside more or less every school, not just in Sheffield, you know, generally. I mean, we are quite limited in terms of what we can do to manage the traffic. In that, yeah, we could put very much more extensive waiting restrictions down, but that then can obviously adversely affect people on a much wider basis. In terms of consultation, the traffic regulation order has to go through its own period of consultation, so residents will be consulted and changes can be made to it as a result of that consultation. It was felt to restrict the times to the sort of busier school drop-off and pick-up times in order to try and least inconvenience residents throughout the day. But again, I think it is really through the travel plan and the active travel that we need to try and influence the modal shift, really. But as I say, we felt that we were going far enough to ensure that we weren't going to get a huge amount of congestion that would result in a highway safety issue, but we weren't going so far that we were actually going to, you know, adversely affect other residents. Thank you, Chair.
Is that what you wanted to hear about?
I think so. I mean, I'm hoping, it's not enforceable as a planning thing, but I'm hoping that the school would work with local residents, because it's a huge concern.
That's not a planning issue.
No, it isn't.
That's out of our control.
Yeah, no, I realise that.
You.
But the other thing is about sort of, you know, current modes of travel to the school already, sort of from the different areas. I know the bus routes very well, especially from the cone-shaped development from the city centre to Bent's Green, but how do people to the side of the catchment get to the school, apart from cars are the obvious way?
I don't know that there's anybody present could answer that question, is there? Is that a management
I'm just
issue?
getting the travel plan up, which does have a
We have a
staff.
travel plan, and
Yeah.
it may be possible to supply the answer to your question.
So I can't provide an answer kind of split up as according to where the students live, but currently, oh sorry, that's the staff split. In terms of the student split, it's currently around over half of students walk to school, and it's only about 25–26% of students that are driven to school. And then the majority of the remainder of that is on the bus.
I'll have to accept that answer because I can't sort of question it at all, but thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've got Councillor Humshaw.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions. Some of them are very straightforward, I think. So when is the work scheduled to begin? It's been brought up already. Is it going to miss the bird nesting season? Because the pressure is on to build this building, so I want to know, kind of have an idea of when it might start. Secondly, on the slides, where is the south side of the road? If you could refer back to the slides, where is the south side of the road? We can have a visual representation of that. That would help me. That's two of the questions. And there is a third one, which is about the travel plan.
Okay, so the south side of the road, it's really the southwest side. So if you're looking at the road, Bent's Drive is kind of diagonal, and it's I guess if you're looking at that aerial image, you've got a triangle created in the top right-hand corner. It's the other side of the road from that triangle. So that's the side of the road where the restrictions are proposed. In terms of the time that the school will be built, again, we can't control when they start the build, but there is a directive proposed to be on the decision notice. It's directive number 6, which states that any felling, pruning, clearance of trees and vegetation should avoid the bird nesting season, which is from March the 1st to August the 31st. And then it points out that all wild birds, their active nests, eggs and young are protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981. So there is other legislation which kind of protects that wildlife. Sorry, what was the other question?
Yes, actually, just on the slides again, you've got an image later of the building as it might look, and there's mention of air source heat pumps, and I wondered where they were on the building, and in respect of air source heat pumps, whether a ground source heat pump had been considered as part of that, because they can be very noisy. So where are they on the building? If you've got a visualisation, do you know?
I don't believe it's shown on any of the plans in particular. It's likely to be on the roof, but I can't confirm that. In terms of a ground source heat pump as an alternative, I guess in terms of planning policy requirements, we can only really ensure that the relevant proportion, which is 10%, is secured through renewable energy, and it doesn't need to be a particular type of renewable energy. There's usually a discounting process that they go through when they submit a sustainability statement to us, and they've obviously kind of settled upon solar panels and air source heat pumps being most appropriate in this case. I can't remember specifically whether there was a reason that a ground source had been discounted, but it does meet well above the 10% requirement for renewable energy. I think it does state in the energy statement that it wouldn't be connected to mains gas at all. So it's a substantial proportion of renewable energy.
Okay. Yeah, just to follow up on that, I'm trying to work out what's on the roof. So you're talking about solar panels, a green space. Is that accessible for students? And the air source heat pumps. That's quite a lot on the roof. The green space, is that accessible for students?
No, it's a green roof system. It's a vegetated roof surface, and then it provides sort of drainage benefits and ecological benefits, but it's not accessible.
Yeah, I just didn't want there to be too many things on the roof, and so some things get squeezed out. Yeah.
Councillor Downing.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. We do need school places. We do need school places all over the city, but this is a start, and I think this is, and I would go with the offer recommendation to grant. Thank you.
Councillor Price, Pete.
Yes, Chair. It's ironic that this application has come straight after the last one when I was defending the green belt to the end. But there are special occasions when one has to look at other factors, and I think it would be irresponsible in this case to turn it down. I think the demand from children right across the city, actually, but particularly in this area, is so great, and it's tragic when families have to be split and siblings have to go to different schools because they can't be housed in their local school. And I do think we have a duty to children in the area to do our best. I think this is the answer. It is in the green belt, but it is in the school's own grounds. And therefore, I'm going to fully support it, Chair, and wish them all the best.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Chair. I too will be supporting this recommendation. In addition to what Councillor Price and Councillor Downing have said, I would also add that it's good to see that the vegetation around the boundary of the school is being maintained and enhanced so that the new building will not be visible from the outside, particularly the valley to the street to the west of the school, and I think that too is to be commended, along with the work done to make the building more environmentally green and as carbon friendly as it can be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humshaw?
Yeah, I think in my opinion these do represent special and exceptional circumstances for developing within the Greenbelt, so I will be voting for the application.
Thank you. I have no more indications, so I propose to move to the vote. I'll move around the room. The officer recommendation is to grant the application conditionally. So, for the reasons as set out in the report, I'm asking you, do you support the officer recommendation? Councillor Humshaw.
I do support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Downing.
Yes, support the officer recommendation.
Councillor Chaplin.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Woodcock.
For the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Price.
Support the recommendation.
Councillor Woodcraft.
Support the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor McCann.
Support the officer recommendation, Chair.
And Councillor Masters.
Support the recommendation, Chair.
And I'm informed that's unanimous. So thank you very much. That application is carried. Thank you for all your hard work on that. And we look forward to having a good school and a good partnership. I'm just waffling for a couple of minutes now because Abby's going out to collect Councillor Davison, to collect Roger so that he can come back in to join the meeting. Councillor Chaplin, you indicated?
Yep. Can we have 5-minute comfort break, please?
You can most certainly. It's 3:49, so if we're back at 3:55. 22/00101 for an erection of an extension to an existing industrial warehouse unit, use classes B2 and B8, and the location is Welbit UK Limited. This is another one for you, Sarah, isn't it? So I'm going to ask you to do the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. If you just go to the next slide, please. The application site is located in Provincial Park Industrial Estate. It's to the east of Nether Lane in Ecclesfield. Industrial uses are located to the north and the east of the site, with the intervening railway located to the east. And residential properties are located to the south, as can be seen in that image. The site is laid out at present with parking area to the west and a servicing area to the east. Planning permission is sought for a 4,430 square metre extension to the west and south of the site. So the extension is proposed to link to the rear of the west elevation, and then it will extend into that green area that you can see to the south of the building and partially within to that tree belt there as well too. The proposal is to allow the expansion of the existing business, which is well built to manufacture professional catering equipment. Next slide, please. These images show the view from that green space, which I highlighted on the previous plan. The image to the left is looking from the green space to the service yard, with a view towards the east of the site, towards the railway, whilst the other image to the right-hand side of the page is again from the open space, but looking towards the west, and you can see the building, the existing building there as well. Another slide from that green space with a bit of a wider view of the existing industrial estate and the existing industrial premises. And then the image in the right-hand side is a view within the green space towards the rear boundary, showing landscaping and trees. These images are of the service yard, so the left-hand side is the rear of the service yard, and you can see the green space behind the fence line. It rises up in height, and then the image to the right is looking towards the northern boundary with the existing premises visible to the left-hand side of the image, and existing premises across to the north visible to the right-hand side. The image to the left-hand side shows the existing parking space, and the image to the right-hand side shows the rear elevation of the existing building and the screening landscaping along the boundary. Next slide, please. So this side shows the proposed layout of the application. As you can see, the site, the extension links to the rear west of the building and extends into the open space. The existing parking area to the left-hand side of the building is proposed to be retained, and existing accesses into the site will be retained with some alterations to the service area. Sorry, can you just go back? Sorry. Thank you. The location of the extension will result in the loss of the green grass area and some of the trees within that area as well. A tree report has been submitted with the application, and that highlights that there are 15 individual trees and 8 tree groups, and the extension will result in the loss of 6 individual trees, 2 tree groups, and partial removal of 3 tree groups. Next slide, please. This is an image of the floor plan. It's perhaps quite hard to see from there, but the proposal is largely for storage of equipment, both for the manufacture of units and for the finished product as well. These images show the elevations of the building. I think the top is, just check, can't quite read the writing on there, but I think the top is the west elevation and the bottom is the north elevation. And you can see from there that the design of the extension reflects the design of the existing building in terms of detailing and in terms of height as well. These are more elevations. The top is the east elevation and the bottom is the south elevation. Again, you can see that the character of the existing building is reflected. So this is a cross-section showing the relationship of the extension with the nearest residential properties. So that second image down is probably the most important one there, and that shows the outline of residential properties in pink with the new extension to the rear. There's a separation distance of between 30 and 34 metres between the rear elevation of existing properties and the new extension. There is, however, a level difference of approximately 5 metres so that the extension is set above the floor levels of the residential properties. However, there is strong landscaping on that boundary, a large amount of which will be retained and which will provide screening for the residential properties. It's also noted that the extension is to the east of the residential properties, and so it won't cast a shadow on the residential properties. These are further sections of the proposal. I think you can just make out some residential you can make out the level of land in the blue line there, which shows the existing land levels and how the extension will be dug into the site. Next slide, please. And this is an image showing the tree cover and how that relates to residential properties and how that will screen those residential properties. It's also worth noting that some of the objections received related to noise, and that a noise report has been submitted as part of the application. The noise report identified that the majority of noise from the premises at present is from the service yard, and that the building of this extension to the south of the service yard will actually act as a barrier to the noise from the service yard, so that noise impacts will be reduced because of this barrier created by the proposed building. Also, in terms of any increased noise from the actual use of the building, it's largely to be used for storage, and so there wouldn't be any increase in noise from that use itself. The hours of use and the equipment proposed in the main building are to remain the same. And that's it.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. We don't have any speakers on this item. Do I have any members' questions? Councillor Holmeshaw.
Thank you. Do you have any idea how many large and mature trees of the trees we've mentioned will be retained? I understand, you know, you've given numbers, but it's the larger ones that I think are important, as we can see up on here. But also, it's the understory as well, because people will be able to see the building. It will be a visual intrusion for them, unless there's a good understory as well. So I just wanted to point that out, and also to ask, do you know any more of that?
Sarah, have you got a... Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, it's a very technical question.
Yes, it is a very technical question. So a tree survey has been submitted with the application. As mentioned, that identified 15 individual trees, and then the rest, and particularly the areas which will be sort of to the south of the building, near to those residential properties, it identified them as tree groups because it was difficult to get into them to survey the trees because of the, as you mentioned, the understory. There were brambles which made it difficult to get in there. So of the individual trees identified, 6 are to be removed. In terms of large mature trees within those tree groups, I'm afraid that I don't have that information. However, it is noted that all the trees along the southern boundary of the existing building, many of which appear to be the larger trees, will all be retained. It's the trees where this extension is proposed which are proposed to be partially removed from those tree groups, but not fully.
And just to say, is it going to be a good understory as well? Because you can see from that image there that I know it's representational, but it shows quite a few gaps between the backs of the houses.
So we have conditioned a soft landscape scheme, which could potentially draw out that kind of information. But in any event, the separation distance between those houses and that building is between 30 and 34 metres, which, you know, coupled with the retention of part of that tree belt, it's considered that the impact on those residential properties will not be unacceptable.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions? Councillor Chaplin.
Yeah, it's just about the wild sort of grassland that's going to be built upon. Prior to that being grassland, was that also industrial, going back some decades?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. It's unclear as to whether that was industrial to start with. I wouldn't like to hazard a guess. Just to sort of expand on the loss of that green space, a preliminary ecological assessment has been submitted as part of the application. There were no protected species on site, and there will be a biodiversity enhancement secured through condition.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Downing.
It's just a quick one. Do we know, I mean, it might not be irrelevant, but do we know how many people that this will employ, jobs for the local people?
I believe that this is part of an expansion plan, and the planning statement submitted with the application said that ultimately the intention is to employ up to 100 additional people.
Thank you.
I can't see anyone else indicating for questions, so I'll take comments. Councillor Price.
Yes, Chair, thanks. This is one of the most uplifting visits I've been on yesterday. It was an amazing place. When people tell me we don't make anything anymore in Sheffield, they ought to visit this factory. Because I think they produce 200 or 300 electric ovens per day, almost all of them for export, and all going to mostly to America, all produced on that factory site. And the problem is, that what we learned from going around, that they store a lot of the stuff outside the grounds, all of it. So they actually shipped these when they finish to different storage places around the city. This concentrates to one site, so if it cuts out all that travelling across the city, it's very clean. And plus the fact that the building part itself acts as a baffle where the noise is coming from, because the noise is from the shifting the boxes around, and the actual building itself will be between that and the houses and the trees, of course. It is very well protected by the tree. I know some trees are coming down, but it's still quite a dense woodland between that and the houses themselves. I think it's an excellent application, Chair, and I fully support it and wish them all the best.
Thank you, Councillor. Roger, Councillor Davison.
Right, thank you very much. First of all, I apologise for not being there yesterday, as I was away and didn't get back in time. But I've asked people for their views and feelings about this particular application. I think one of the things that does impress me is one of the things that is the thing that, rather, not one, but the things that Councillor Price was talking about, which is pretty comprehensive, about the fact that you've got a very vibrant business that is helping not only exports for the country, but in providing very valuable income for the city, and I think and naturally employment. So it's something that we really need. Then you look at the site and all the provisions for flood arrangements seem to have been met, as far as I can read on here, and so that I mean, it's for once in a 1,000-year problem. They seem to have sorted that particular one out. Noise was another one that was brought up, wasn't it? Which again, Councillor Price mentioned that, as did, of course, our planning officer too. So I'm very excited about an expansion in manufacturing in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And now I've got Councillor Chaplin. Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting the recommendation too. I found the site visit yesterday very helpful in understanding that by repositioning the doors to where the HGVs will be loading and unloading away from the housing estate will greatly cut down the noise levels. It will also improve the economics for the business, because at the moment they are actually sending parts and I don't know whether it's the finished products as well, but certainly a lot of their materials are actually going out of the city. I think Bolton was mentioned as one of the warehouse sites that they were having. So for that to be moved out of Sheffield and then brought back in again is clearly economically very wasteful. It's not the kind of thing we want to encourage if we're going to be reducing our carbon footprint either. And it's a great British manufacturing export story, as Peter Price has just mentioned. But this also wins on planning grounds too. This is designated industrial land. It's where we should be having industrial development, and it's in the right place. So it's clear to me that this recommendation should be supported.
Thank you. And I've got Councillor Holmshaw.
Yes, I agree. Having visited the site, I've had a good look around, and I'm, on balance, I'm pretty satisfied that the noise levels will be less after the works have been done. Along also, I hope, with the lighting as well, which will be at a lower level. And hopefully that's going to be monitored as well. So I hope it's monitored and evaluated over time. So yes, I'm going to be voting for this application.
Thank you very much. I can see no more indications, so just with the remark that you can tell that we enjoyed our site visits yesterday, I'm going to go to the vote, and the officer recommendation is to grant this application conditionally for the reasons as set out in the application. So I'm going to go first to Councillor Holmshaw.
I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation on this application.
Thank you. Councillor Downing.
Support the officer recommendation.
Councillor Chaplin.
For the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Woodcock.
For the officer recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Price.
For the recommendation.
Councillor Woodcraft.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor McCann.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Davison.
Sorry, for the officer's recommendation.
And finally, Councillor Marston.
For the recommendation, Chair.
That's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much. That application is passed. And we come to our final item on the agenda for today. Item number 11, which starts on page 141, which is a record of planning appeals, submissions and decisions. The recommendation is for officers to, for members to note this, but I have had an indication that a member would like to ask a question on this, so I'm going to pass over to Councillor Davison.
Thank you very much, Chair. I know this particular one is the first one, was a delegated decision, so I'm not familiar with it, but perhaps you could tell me what the problem was with the granting permission for the extension that the people on Dalmore Road wish to have.
I don't know if we'll have that level of detail in this meeting, Roger. We may have to get you a written answer, Dinah?
We've only just received that appeal, and so we haven't put forward our statement yet, Councillor Davison. So I'm not quite sure from this information on what basis it was refused.
Much. Would it be possible to, to tell me when you've got that information, or email me, because I'd be interested on what grounds. Because I mean, this could be useful for us in decision making anyway in the future. Thank you.
I'll get an officer to write you a written answer, Roger, if that's okay. Yeah. Diana, is there anything that we need to note particularly in this report? It doesn't seem that we've had any...
I think so, Chair. They were all delegated decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of sort of few brief explanations, but nothing significant to pick out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Chaplin.
I think planning officers should be commended because in every case the inspector has backed up the planning officer's decision, and it's good to see that.
It most certainly is, Mike, and we probably don't say thank you for using your expertise for the benefit of the city often enough. So thank you for that. Can we note this report? Thank you very much. And let me just have a look. The date of the next meeting is Tuesday, the 11th of October at 2 p.m. When Alan will be chairing. So thank you very much for your attendance and good afternoon.